So I guess I need to get this off my chest because I'm still processing everything that went down with Brett. We were supposed to get married in June at this gorgeous vineyard in Napa Valley. Everything was planned, deposits paid, dress alterations, done. My Vera Wang was hanging in the closet, and I'd even splurged on those Louboutin heels I'd been eyeing forever. 3 months before the wedding, Brett and I were chilling on the couch watching The Bachelor. I was munching on some Doritos when he suddenly paused the TV and said he needed to talk about something important. My first thought was that his mom was trying to add more people to the guest list again. But no, it was way worse. He literally looked me straight in the eye and said, "Sarah, I think you need to lose weight before the wedding. You're just not pretty enough for the photos I want." I legit thought he was joking at first. Like, this man I'd been with for 4 years was sitting there in his ratty Lakers jersey telling me I wasn't pretty enough. I asked him to repeat himself because surely I misheard, but nope, he doubled down. Started talking about how his college roommate's wife looked banging at their wedding because she did this juice cleanse. Said he wanted our wedding photos to be Instagram-worthy and that I should hit up his CrossFit gym. Y'all, I'm a size 8. I run half marathons. I eat healthy most of the time. Though yeah, I love my In-N-Out burgers. But this man had the audacity to suggest I wasn't good enough to marry unless I dropped 20 pounds. The worst part? He pulled out his phone and showed me these Pinterest boards he'd been saving of wedding body goals. I'm not even kidding. This grown man had been collecting photos of random women in wedding dresses as examples of what he wanted me to look like. Sat there in complete shock while he kept talking about meal plans and how his trainer Chad could give me a discount. He even mentioned that his sister lost 30 pounds for her wedding and how amazing she looked. Mind you, his sister developed an eating disorder after that, but apparently that little detail didn't matter to him. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying his words in my head. The next morning, I called my best friend Megan, and she came over with wine and tissues. After I told her everything, she helped me see how messed up this whole situation was. Within 48 hours, I made 3 decisions. The wedding was offed. Brett needed to get out of our apartment. I was going to make him pay for this. First thing I did was call our wedding venues and vendors. Lost about $15,000 in deposits, but honestly, worth every penny to not marry that jerk. The venue coordinator at the winery was super understanding when I explained the situation. She even offered to blacklist him from their preferred vendor list. Next, I packed all of Brett's stuff while he was at work. And I mean all of it, including that stupid protein powder collection that took up half our kitchen cabinet and his beloved signed Tom Brady jersey. Everything went into boxes that I neatly stacked by the front door. When he came home that evening, still clueless, I was sitting at the dining table with my laptop open. He walked in all casual, asking what was for dinner. I just pointed to his boxes and said, "Your dinner plans just changed, buddy." The look on his face was priceless. He went from confused to angry to desperate in about 30 seconds. Started saying I was overreacting, that he was just trying to help me be my best self for our special day. Then he tried the manipulation route, saying he loved me and just wanted beautiful photos to show our future kids. Future kids? With him? Not a chance. I told him he had 1 hour to get his stuff and leave. He tried to argue that his name was on the lease too, but I reminded him that actually, only my name was on it since I'd moved in first, and he never got around to being added. Funny how that worked out. Updated. After Brett left that night, things got wild real quick. He went straight to his parents' place in the valley, and apparently gave them some sob story about how I'd lost my mind and kicked him out for no reason. His mom, Karen, yes, her actual name, started blowing up my phone with texts about how I was making a huge mistake and that Brett was just looking out for my health. Looking out for my health? This woman who serves deep-fried everything at family dinners was concerned about my health? Please. But here's where it gets juicy. I found out through mutual friends that Brett had been telling everyone a completely different story. According to him, I was a bridezilla who flipped out when he suggested we both get in shape for the wedding. He conveniently left out the part where he called me not pretty enough and showed me his creepy Pinterest board. So I decided to set the record straight. I posted on Facebook, where all his family and our mutual friends could see, a simple status. Wedding's off. Turns out I'm not pretty enough for photos. If anyone wants a barely worn Vera Wang dress, size 8, hit me up. The comments section exploded. People who'd known us as a couple were shocked. His sister Ashley actually messaged me privately to apologize for her brother and shared her own struggles with body image after her wedding. Even his college buddies were calling him out in the comments. But Brett wasn't done. He showed up at my work. I'm a marketing manager at a tech startup in Santa Monica with flowers and this whole speech prepared. Security had to escort him out when he wouldn't leave. My boss was cool about it, but it was embarrassing having my personal drama play out in front of my coworkers. That's when I decided to take legal action. See, in California, we have laws about intentional infliction of emotional distress. My lawyer friend from college, Jordan, said I had a pretty solid case, especially with all the documentation I had. I had screenshots of his texts telling me to drop the weight or drop the wedding, the Pinterest boards he'd sent me, and even a voicemail where he said I'd look so much hotter if I just tried harder. Plus, several of our friends were willing to testify about comments he'd made about my appearance at various gatherings. The lawsuit wasn't about money, really. It was about making him accountable for his actions. I asked for $50,000 in damages for emotional distress, the $15,000 I lost in wedding deposits, and coverage of my therapy bills. When Brett got served, he completely lost it. Suddenly, the man, who thought I wasn't pretty enough, was begging me to take him back. He showed up at my apartment at 2 a.m., literally on his knees in the hallway, crying and saying he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, bless her heart, opened her door and told him to get lost before I call my grandson, who's a cop. He finally left, but not before leaving a 6-page handwritten letter under my door about how sorry he was and how he'd been influenced by toxic masculinity and unrealistic beauty standards. Toxic masculinity? This man discovered feminism real quick when his bank account was on the line. The legal proceedings took about 4 months. During this time, I learned so much about Brett that I'd either ignored or never knew. His ex before me, she'd also dealt with his criticism about her appearance. Apparently, this was a pattern. I also found out he'd been following all these Instagram fitness models and commenting on their posts while we were together. Not cheating, technically, but definitely gross. One of them even DM'd me to say he'd been messaging her about training tips for his fiancé who needed to lose weight. Meanwhile, I was thriving. I started therapy, which was amazing, joined a hiking group, and even went on a few dates. Nothing serious, but it felt good to be appreciated for who I was. I also treated myself to a solo trip to Hawaii with some of the money I would have spent on the honeymoon. The court date finally came, and Brett showed up in his best suit, looking like he'd aged 5 years. His lawyer tried to argue that his comments were just honest communication between partners, and that I was being vindictive. My lawyer shut that down real quick with all our evidence. Updated. The judge, this badass woman in her 60s, was not having any of Brett's excuses. When his lawyer tried to argue that suggesting weight loss was normal pre-wedding communication, she actually laughed. Like, literally chuckled and said, "Counselor, I've been married 35 years, and if my husband had pulled this stunt, he'd be sleeping in the garage permanently." Brett's face during the proceedings was something else. He kept trying to make eye contact with me, doing this whole wounded puppy thing. His mom was there too, sitting in the back row giving me death stares like this was all my fault. She actually tried to approach me during a break, but my lawyer shut that down fast. The testimonies were brutal for Brett. My therapist provided a statement about the impact on my mental health. 3 of our mutual friends testified about instances where Brett had made comments about my weight or appearance in social settings. His ex-girlfriend Natalie even showed up as a witness, sharing her own experience with his body shaming during their relationship. The most damaging evidence was a series of texts between Brett and his best friend Mike, where Brett literally said he was embarrassed to have a chubby fiancé and that he was worried his groomsmen would judge him. Mike, to his credit, had told Brett he was being an idiot, but Brett kept pushing the issue. The judge ruled in my favor. Brett was ordered to pay $35,000 for intentional infliction of emotional distress, $15,000 to cover my lost wedding deposits, $5,000 for my therapy costs, all legal fees. The total came to about $75,000 with lawyer fees. Brett's face went white when the judgment was read. His lawyer tried to negotiate a payment plan, but I insisted on a lump sum. Petty? Maybe. Satisfying? Absolutely. Here's the kicker. Brett had to sell his precious BMW M3 to pay the settlement. The same car he used to brag about at every opportunity. He also had to cash out some of his 401k, which came with penalties. His financial advisor, who happened to be a friend of a friend, let slip that Brett's credit score took a massive hit. The aftermath was even better than the court victory. Brett's social life basically imploded. His CrossFit gym buddies started calling him Shallow Hal. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. His sister Ashley stopped talking to him after she found out the full story. Even his boss at the investment firm where he worked made some pointed comments about company values during a team meeting. I found out through the grapevine that Brett had to move back in with his parents because he couldn't afford his downtown LA apartment anymore. Karen's Facebook post went from "my successful son" to radio silence real quick. Someone told me he's literally living in their finished basement, the same one where he used to store his college beer pong table. The best part? About 2 months after the settlement, Brett started dating this girl from his gym. She dumped him. After 3 weeks, when she Googled him and found a blog post I'd written about the whole experience, Yes, I went viral on Medium with the story, 500K views and counting. Meanwhile, my life did a complete 180. The therapy helped me realize that Brett's comments were just the tip of the iceberg of his controlling behavior. I started seeing the red flags I'd ignored, how he'd make subtle digs about my career being cute compared to his finance job, or how he'd joke about my cooking skills in front of friends. I ended up using my wedding dress fund to take a photography class I'd always wanted to try. Turns out I'm pretty good at it, and I've started doing weekend wedding photography as a side hustle. The irony of photographing other people's weddings while my own imploded isn't lost on me, but honestly, it's therapeutic. I also joined a running club and ended up training for a full marathon. Crossed the finish line at the LA Marathon wearing a shirt that said, "Pretty enough." The photos went viral on running Instagram. Even got featured in Women's Running magazine as an inspirational story. Final update. It's been a year now since everything went down, and I barely recognized the person I was when I was with Brett. Last week, I ran into him at Whole Foods, of all places. Guess he's still trying to maintain that image. He was with his mom, and they both froze when they saw me. I was grabbing some Ben & Jerry's because I can eat whatever I want, thank you very much, when I heard someone clear their throat behind me. There was Brett, looking rough. He'd gained weight, the irony. His hair was thinning, and he had this defeated look in his eyes. He mumbled something about being sorry and hoping I was doing well. His mom couldn't help herself, though. She started going off about how I ruined her son's life and how he was depressed and living at home because of me. I just smiled, said, "That sounds like a him problem," grabbed my ice cream and walked away. Later that day, I got a LinkedIn notification. Brett had viewed my profile. Turns out he's now working at a much smaller firm, basically starting over career-wise. Meanwhile, I just got promoted to senior marketing director, bought my own condo in Manhattan Beach, and am planning a solo trip to Italy with my bonus. The best revenge? Living well. While Brett's stuck in his parents' basement worried about his image, I'm out here living my best life at whatever size I want to be. And yes, I'm pretty enough. Always was, always will be. To anyone dealing with someone who makes you feel less than, you deserve better. Your worth isn't determined by your weight, your looks, or anyone else's opinion. Sometimes the best thing you can do is lose 200 pounds of dead weight, and I'm not talking about body weight. I'm talking about toxic partners. Brett, if you're reading this, and I know you are because my friends tell me you still cyberstalk me, I hope you learned something. But honestly, I don't really care anymore. I'm too busy being happy, successful, and yes, pretty enough.